Last time we brought the railroad to Esther County, Urban and Ravenna. This week we're going to explore the railroad at Ravenna. The LN brought the LNA Railroad and started building the yard and actually started building the town. Part of the land was designated as housing for the employees. The reason for this was to promote a place for the access to the work at the yards. Here we see the beginning of construction. Some houses have already been built, and what better for the first business to be for a furniture store to furnish the new houses. Men who worked also need clothing. So Hatfield built a clothing store. Most of the houses in this picture are still there. Notice the tent and the box cars and stuff needed. There's a temporary track built toward the city of Ravenna just for supplies and for the men to stay in while they were building it. Notice the cold smoke coming from all the chimneys. That was the main source of heat. A rail bridge was moved from the railroad track at Ford, Kentucky. I understand it was floated on the river somehow and put up for a walk bridge from the city of Ravenna over to the shops so the men could get over the tracks. You'll notice over on Main Street there's several more businesses to the right hand side of the screen there. Some of those buildings are still there as well. This is a view of the bridge from Ravenna looking toward the shops. You notice there's several cars of materials still sitting there. And here we have a picture after the bridge was complete. The box cars were gone, the track was taken up while they were working on Ravenna. And the coal smoke is coming out of the stack over at the shops. I'm not sure what year those cars are, but they look like 20s to me. By the time this picture was made, there were several hundred employees working in the shops. Welders, pipe fitters, blacksmiths, boilermakers, helpers for all of those jobs, plus crews for the trains, yard jobs, office forces, service attendants, car inspectors, and so forth. This is a view of the area of the urban Ravenna line. You notice there are tracks where River Drive is now. It's a caboose track. The big white building in the middle was a frozen food locker, which had a track running up to it. That's where they stored frozen foods for the stores and so forth around town. You can't really see it, but that Sweet Lick Knob in the background there, and right straight in front of it is a business called E.M. Davis General Merchandise. And there were several businesses around that merchandise store. The houses you see right at the bottom of the Ravenna Mountain there are still there. And there's two buildings there. One was Russner's IGA, that building's still there. And the other one was a restaurant, and it has a barbershop in it now. Notice the foreign line boxcar sitting there. There's a Santa Fe, a B&O, a New York Central, At that time, all supplies moved by rail. They didn't have superhighways, and that's how the supplies got from the West Coast and New England and whatever to little old Ravenna and Irvine. One of the biggest jobs that L&M encountered was building facilities for the town of Ravenna. This is a picture of the crew that built the streets, built the sewers, built the utilities in the city of Ravenna. I'm not sure where that house is, but I think it's on Elm Street. Construction was done from 1924 to 1926. Here we see a steam engine. I guess it's a crane with a bucket on the end of it to pick up materials and move them from one place to the other. Those are steel wheels, so forth. I believe you call it a steam shovel. I believe this is a rock crusher. You see mules with wagons lined up down that way. In the background is Williams Memorial Baptist Church. And they would bring those big rocks in, it looks like, but with the mules, there's one under there right now, and I guess they dump them and crush them and then use them for the streets and so forth. This is a picture of a crew making concrete. You see a pile of sand behind those culverts there. And then I assume that gondola sitting there with those two men on top of it probably has rock in it. Here's another view of that. Well, you can see it or not, but the race of most of those workers is black. They got the dirty work back there. The truck in front of the concrete plant there is W.T. Connaughton. W.T. Connaughton is still in business today, still doing what they do. It's another closer up picture of the rock crusher. This is the L&M band. Hard to believe that they had enough people to have their own band. Here's even more. The chief clerk in the passenger depot, chief to the superintendent, whatever his title was, he's the one that organized this band and wrote music for them and so forth. And I think they performed at a lot of different places. In 1956, this is the L&M steam engine. 1962, which was the last M1 to come to Ravenna. It was on an excursion out of Cincinnati. There's that same locomotive on the turntable that was sitting right out there. Blowing coal smoke now. probably getting ready to pull off the turntable. This is the turntable with a steam engine and a tender on it. I lost count at 200 trying to count how many was on it.
Is that all workers that worked here?
That's all workers that worked over here, yes. And that's not all of them.
Oh, wow.
This is the coaling tower, which set probably about where the parking lot is for the recycle plant up there. The thing that looks like a mountain to the right-hand side there is coal. The tank is a water tank. The steam engines would pull under there and get coal and water in their tenders.
So did they pump water from the river into the tanks, or?
Yes, they actually had a pump station over on the river that was manned. And the last time I went up the river, it was still there. I don't know what's left of it was still there. They pumped it all the way from the river over here to furnish the water for everything over here pretty much.
Okay.
I'm sure it wasn't the drinking water, but everything else was furnished from there. And that was over on the other side of where the golf course is now.
Okay.
And the golf course also belonged to the L&N. They built that golf course for their officials. And in 1980s, sometime, they sold it to the members of the Esther County Golf Club. They bought shares and bought it from the railroad. This is the steam engine 1894. The building you see right in front of it was the yard office. That's where the yardmaster and the switch crews and some clerks worked. And here's the coaling tower at a later date. You can't see them, but there's two men standing under it. And it looks like a speeder behind them. But I don't believe it was still in service at this point, the looks of the track. In fact, it was still there when I started in 1974. Not all the appendages, but the tower itself was still there.
So you mentioned the speeder. What's that?
That's a little cart with rail wheels that they put on the track for the section men to ride on.
Okay.
And take them to the work site and whatever. There's
Okay.
two of them. There's two of them up at the shop. But, that's a big hobby now, is to buy you a speeder and go somewhere you can put it on the track and take a trip. There's the coaling tower in the background and the water tank in the background. The building on the right is the car shops. All those tank cars labeled Texaco were for the refinery at Price, which was a big operation. There was 100 people working up there too. It's hard to believe all these buildings just as on one up. There's a view of the turntable with a diesel on the turntable being turned. And I haven't seen the graph. I don't know whether the Y-track was there at this time or not, because it seemed like they turned about everything on the turntable. Here's a view of the roundhouse. The little building there in the middle is where the controls were for the turntable. You notice there's 4 steam engine tenders in the roundhouse. And the one on the right hand side, the last stall, notice how much bigger it is than the other 3. That was an M1 tender. It's a view of the yards and the car shop building on the other side of the tracks. This picture was made from the liar's bench. Notice the little lights hanging down. Mm-hmm. The old men sat over there on benches and chewed and spit and whittled cedar and talked about good times. So view of the yards looking south. Over on the left-hand side, you can see the passenger depot. And there's the coaling tower again. And just a little bit of the car shops is right there where that little building there is. Must not have been too much business because there's a lot of empty tracks. Now we've got the turntable and the roundhouse with diesel locomotives sitting in the stalls. In the back to the right, there's a steam engine tender. There was a track ran in behind the car shops. What kind of locomotive is that, Elmer?
I think they're Alco F8s.
A what?
I think it's Alco F8s.
F8?
Yeah. Those pictures were taken in 1958.
Well, this is Irvin. If you came up Kirkland Avenue, you saw those houses there. They're still there. The big square one has just recently been redone. It's a steam engine 1770, and on the right-hand side is the Irvin Passenger Depot. Another view of the Irvin Passenger Depot with a passenger train on the right and a coal train on the left. And as you can see the road going up there and going across the tracks, that's the old Kirkland Avenue Bridge. Which has not been gone, don't seem like that many years, but it's been a while too. So. Another view of the Irvin Depot. Up on the right, the white buildings is where Hardy Oil is today. Behind that is the Home Lumber Company, which is where the big vacant lot is there at Kirkland Avenue and River Drive. On the left-hand side there, just the other side of that bridge, is where the Riney B and the L&A came across that holler down there to a lumber company that was located where those buildings are. This is 1958, Esther County Sesquicentennial. The LN sponsored a float with a steam engine of all things. The Union Bank, part of that building's still there, they built around it. Fikes Auto Supply was later Gross Auto Parts and Ford's Auto Parts, and the building next to that was a five and dime store. Sesquicentennial was a big happening here in Esther County in 1958. A whole week of parades and theatrics down at the Old Irvin football field. All the men either had to have a beard or a mustache, or they put them in jail. They had to buy their way out. The only time my dad ever had a mustache, and the only time my grandfather ever had a mustache. And they didn't keep them long after that was over. And then tragedy struck Ravenna. That's a picture of the tornado. Those newspapers are at the end of the counter up there if you want to look at them closer. The Esther Herald, which came out a week afterwards, on the right hand side it listed all the people that were injured and what was wrong with them and what hospital they were in. All the children were in the Ravenna Christian Church when it hit. This is the view of the railroad yards. That's the bridge twisted up behind the service station that's still over there. The building in the background is this building. There's the bridge again. That's the roundhouse, what's left of it. And that's a 2x6 in the side of that that hopper car. It rode a 2x6 through the metal wall of that hopper. City Hall. There's a clock on the front of it there that stopped at the time it was hit.
Now, is that building still there?
No.
They tore it down?
Yeah. Yeah, City Hall's in with the fire station there. The building to the right is still there. That's a view of the church. When this hit, of course it tore out the roundhouse and the shops, and a lot of men lost their jobs because they didn't rebuild. They just moved the work somewhere else. Another view of the church.
Is that the church where all the children were at?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And probably 2 or 3 days after that, I went in the basement of that church. It was a mess. My grandparents lived on Elm Street, which was just a little over a block from where that church was. They didn't get any damage other than maybe some shingles or something.
Why were all the children at the church?
Bible school.
Bible school?
Bible school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Bible school. And some of the teachers and the children were, well, you can see what came in on them. One of the girls never did walk right again. One of the boys had a big scar across his head that stayed the rest of his life.
Is that where most of the injuries was at, or?
About all of them was in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a man ran a donut shop there on Main Street. They had to dig him out. But he wasn't, he was hurt, but. Looks like a bomb site.
Yes, it does.
And this was the beginning of the end of the Turkish force in the passenger station. Because a lot of them worked over there, and after all this damage, they began moving the forces to Cincinnati, Latonia, and Louisville, the office forces. And they shut, the passenger trains weren't running anymore, and they just shut the building down. That's the alley behind Main Street. There's the church again. I had an aunt that lived the next house up the street from that church, and they weren't damaged very much either. There's Main Street. The building up there with the white windows around it was Flynn's paint store at that time, and it was Bryant's paint store that just closed a couple years ago. A lot of these buildings were 3-story and they're now 2-story. Those two women walked down the street, looked like my grandmother and my mother, but I can't ascertain that's who it is.
The two in the very front,
Yeah, the two.
near the pole.
Yeah, with the raincoats and the little plastic things over their head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they both wore those religiously. That was a big brick building. We just demolished it. I believe those guys are trying to turn the water off, but I'm not sure. That's what it looks like to me. There's the paint store again in Hatfields. That's the same Hatfield that we saw that picture of a while ago. Different building, but it's the same Hatfield.
Is Hatfields where the furniture store is now?
Yes, I think so. It's next door to the paint store.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was an apartment up over the paint store there. You can see a gap in there. Had steps going up to it. And there was a family, the name of Hood, lived upstairs there. Of course, you don't see any damage from the tornado, but After the tornado was over, she opened the door and stepped out. The stairs were still there, but the landing was gone.
Oh,
She fell 2 stories to the ground.
oh my.
I think she was the only casualty after the tornado. Broke her legs, I think. The building to the right of it was Ravenna drugstore, which is where Sharon's thing is now. I believe the white building is gone. There's a McClanahan or something's got some kind of business or something in that lot. Breakfield's Grocery and Cloud Isaac's Barber Shop. They were back down the street this way from the paint store. That could be where this furniture store is now, I'm not positive. There's a Henry J. Be worth a lot of money today. State policeman there. In 1962, the LN decided to rebuild the old steam locomotive, the General, and do tours on the railroad to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the year it was stolen. The General was a Civil War era steam locomotive which was captured by a Union spy and some civilians on April 12, 1862. They were trying to wound the Confederate States by destruction. It was called the Great Locomotive Chase of the War. The conductor chased it on foot, then on a push cart, then finally got another engine. But the General didn't have to worry about it. The General ran out of fuel 2 miles north of Ringgold, Georgia. The General is a 440 which belonged to the Western and Atlantic Railroad. It's currently on static display in Kennesaw, Georgia. Excursions ran all over the railroad, coming to Ravenna in August of 1862. Excursions ran both north and south out of Ravenna. This is a copy of a couple of tickets to ride the General from Ravenna to Beattyville. That trip took place on August the 9th. Which was only 3 days after the 100th anniversary, or 3 days before the 100th anniversary. And the General was blowing a lot of black smoke, arriving at Ravenna to a big crowd gathered for the arrival. You noticed all the tracks to the right-hand side of the main line are gone by now. Service station's still there. The white frozen food locker in the background is gone. The water tank's gone. And it finally stopped and everybody climbed at it. Those 4 men in front of it are the train crew and the conductor, brakeman, whatever, in period clothing. They had a barrier up that you can see running, but that didn't stop some of them. They climbed up on top of the barrier and got a closer look. That's some local dignitaries with the General. You notice the flags the crews carry. Guess those are supposed to be the robbers, whatever. That gentleman is the conductor. And this is the conductor helping the passengers get off the passenger car. This picture was made at the top of Chenoweth Hill, Chenoweth Tunnel, whatever. That's between Beattyville and Jackson. And here it goes down the main line, that's River Drive, and corner of Maple Street. There's no car going south there on River Drive. I don't know if you see it or not.
Mhm.
There it is on Red River Bridge. Going toward Winchester. And here's another view of it. Headed north at the passenger station. The gentleman in the white shirt to the left there is my grandfather.
The one that looks like he's gonna step down.
The one over here, getting close to the track,
Uh-huh,
right out in front.
yeah.
Yeah, that's him. He just lived a block away. Okay. This is an M1 to 1971. The LN didn't see fit to save any of those locomotives. They saved some of the tenders, but didn't save any of the steam engines.
Is it because they just didn't have any place to store them, or?
I don't know what the deal was, whether they needed to scrap or what, but they didn't save any. And it's probably the best locomotive they ever had. We have a model of it sitting over there in that case over there. And a drawing up on the wall. Then LN decided to open the Ravenna depot back up again and move all the offices in it. Move the dispatcher upstairs, CTC, centralized traffic control. Move everything from over on the other side over to this building. That's the building I started in 1974. And here it is in 1979 with the dump trucks lined up to haul it away. It was a fabulous building. Don't we wish we had it now?
Oh, yeah. Looks like an old school.
Yeah, it was a passenger station. The passenger station was the center part of the building. That office is upstairs. Over on the left-hand side, you can't hardly see it, but there was a black colored-only entrance. Around on the back, during passenger days, there was a restaurant around back. On this end was a railway express agency that brought freight in and one of the clerks got extra money for handling that and taking it wherever it went. The precursor to UPS and FedEx. Over on the left-hand side, they had signal offices and maintenance way offices. The furnace was in the basement, and not too long before I started, they were still feeding coal to the furnace. They had converted it to gas by the time I started. Here's an LN locomotive. The Ravenna Stein still hanging, and the baggage cart still sitting on the platform. That baggage cart disappeared in the middle of the night behind a pickup truck. Went down River Drive with sparks flying all the way to West Irving. The guy that stole it said if it come loose, he wasn't stopping. I don't know what happened to it now. It's gone. So is the Ravenna sign. Can't locate it either. There's the LN 1404 at Irving. Different paint scheme. Went from the LN to the family lines, the LN and the SCL. 1972. That's also at Irving. Went from family lines to the seaboard system. And from the seaboard system to the CSX, the chassis and the seaboard merged. CSX stopped running trains, freight trains through Ravenna in 2017. And in 2018, Kentucky Steam Heritage bought the property. The office forces and the shop forces had already been moved a long time before they quit running trains, sometime during the 1990s. This is two views of the shops up there. The bottom one is what it looked like when Kentucky Steam bought it. The top one is even better today, but that was after part of the cleanup anyway. It looks a lot better even today than it does there. And the 2716 arrived on July 28, 2019. It's a big fanfare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sitting up there being worked on. This is a locomotive that CSX donated to us. That's our main power right now. This is Barney's steam engine. Run quite a few trips between the shops and the south end. In the baggage car. Caboose is back there somewhere. This is a new entertainment pavilion, sponsored by Hardy Oil. It's about ready to go, I think. the caboose shops at Huntington completely redid it, rebuilt it. It looks just like it came in however many years ago it was built. They put new floor and everything in. That's all, folks.
So when did the brick plant stop bringing brick over to load?
That was probably early 1990s. They sent a guy in here out of Jacksonville to move all of our industry out.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had a brick track. They, I don't know what they gave them to start taking brick to Avon.
mm-hmm,
That's where they moved it to.
yeah,
It was in the early 90s because I was still working in the office. But that was a big lick, and we had other business that they didn't want. They didn't want anything but unit trains. We had logging and boxcar, propane gas cars, and fertilizer and everything that went through here. Beer for hazard. They didn't want it. All they wanted was coal unit trains, and when they were gone, they didn't have anything left.
yeah.
Yeah.
So where the concrete thing is now, where they can get concrete, is that the original
Where?
out here? Where they, across from like, the Mexican restaurant? Is that part of the, was it called?
Concrete plant? We never hauled anything from them that I know of, but the brick track went in there, and there's a, I don't know if it's still there or not, there was a big ramp there.
Yeah.
Where they used the tow motor to go up and load the brick.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they took those tracks out too. Yeah, they didn't want any single car business. And they do 2 or 3 loads of brick a week.
Right.
Yeah. And they had a coal company at St. Helens that wanted to put in a bigger sidetrack. They asked him so much money he couldn't afford it. There's a company that wanted to put in a pellet plant in Breathitt County. They asked him so much money to put in a switch, he couldn't afford it. I mean, they had long-range plans to just get rid of it.
Do you have any last words to say?
Come see us,
Where you located?
499 Kirkland Avenue in Irving.
See you next week.